Chapter 9, The Luck of Rune. We finished bottom of 72 with Ka appearing and crying out, Eilonwy, Eilonwy, so they know Eilonwy maybe he's not near, but at least they're on the right track. Okay? So they follow Ka for a while. I'm going to skip a bunch. In page 75, Rune finds Eilonwy's bauble, so they know she's been there. Skip a bunch again. And go to chapter 10, where they discover the cave. Okay, or get trapped in the cave, I should say. Page 84 of chapter 10. They're in the cavern. It's dark. And they're trying to figure out a way out. And Taryn suddenly realizes we have something that creates light. Top of that page, Eilonwy's bauble. If only it will light for us. So he pulls it out, looks at it, moves his hand, around it and such. Doesn't do a thing. And Taryn believes, middle of that page, a fear is not given to an assistant pig keeper to command such a thing of beauty and enchantment. Notice, when he says, it's not given to an assistant pig keeper to do this kind of thing, he's saying that on two levels. The surface level is what? What's he saying about himself? I don't amount to much. In other words, he's focused on himself. Okay? I'm just an assistant pig keeper. I can't do much. All right? This is going to be important because we're going to pull it up. We're going to come back to this idea a little later on. Okay? Page 85. Then. Okay? On 84, Rune says, well, if you can't do it, I surely can't. Fluter tries. Nothing happens. Gurgi looks in it. Nothing happens. And then we're told, middle of 85, Gurgi hands it back to Taryn. With yearning now he held it, and his mind turned from his own plight to thoughts of Eilonwy. He saw her face, once more heard her gay laughter ring clearer than the notes of Fluter's harp. Notice, he's thinking, he's remembering these things. He's not seeing these in the ball. He smiles to himself, and he's getting ready to put it back in his jacket, and a light starts to shine deep down within. And it grows and grows and grows and grows. Taryn, springs forth, holding it out. They see all around them. They see jewels and all this kind of stuff all around. Okay. Taryn thinks maybe it's part of the fair folks realm. We're going to get to, in a moment, why the bauble lit up. Okay. Go to the next chapter, King of the Stones. We meet Glue, who had been diminutive, a midget or whatever, and who is now a giant stuck in the cavern. Skip a bunch. They talk a lot. Glue does have a means of kind of letting them out, but he's not going to. Instead, he seals the cavern. Chapter 12. Glue says, I will let some of you out, but one or more of you won't be able to. Okay? Bottom of 105. They're talking about Glue's offer. Okay? Which is, somebody essentially needs to stay behind while the others can leave. Taryn picks up the bauble, hoping to find some crack or tiny opening. No. He says we're trapped. There's only one way out, the way Glue offers us. Rune, well, he's only asked for one of us. That would leave 3 to keep searching for the princess. Terran, you know, and I figured out where Mag took her. That is Eilonwy, Caer Llyr. Now, knowing that's useless. Rune says, no, it's not. Not at all. We need only do as Glue suggests and the others can be on their way. That is, you know where she is. If one of us stays behind, do as Glue suggests, the others of you can go off to Caer Llyr. Okay? So they keep talking. Fluter says, you really expect him to keep to his word? Rune, can't be sure until we try. And what happens? Gurgi offers himself. Gurgi's willing to sacrifice himself for the others. Terran says, no, we can't do that. We have to stand together. In other words, I'm not going to let one of us be sacrificed and the others go on. All right? So they keep talking again. Fluter kind of like, there's pretty much only one way out. Bottom of 106, Terran says, you're not suggesting we take the bargain. No. Okay? Top of 107, Rune says, I do. I think we should. It's the only thing that will satisfy Glue. And for that, I think it's a very cheap bargain. Terran, no life can be so cheaply held. I'm afraid you're wrong. He smiled and shook his head. I've thought a great deal about this since we've been in the cavern, and there's no sense not facing facts. I don't see I've been any help whatsoever. On the contrary, I brought nothing but ill luck. Not that I meant to, but it seems that's the way of it with me. So, if any of us can be dispensed with, it should be me. Notice the logic of Rune's thinking. All I do is what? Screw up. Bring trouble. Leave me. The rest of you can go off and successfully rescue Eilonwy. Notice, Terran doesn't even get to reply before Rune continues. It's true. Disregarding Terran's cry of protest, I'm delighted to be of some use for once. I can actually do something positive here, he's saying, especially if it will help Eilonwy. Notice, if it will help Eilonwy, who will it not help? Rune. I assure you, I won't mind in the slightest. As Glue says, it will only take a moment. So what does he mean? I won't mind in the slightest. My death will be quick. Okay? Glue has kind of promised that. There's not one of you who wouldn't give up his life for a companion, Rune says. Fluter Flam, he's already done it, right? Offered his life for ours in Leon's lair. Even now, Gurgi is willing to offer his. Gurgi raises his head. A bard, a humble creature of the forest, an assistant pig keeper. Can a prince do less? Why does he say a prince and not I? What's he appealing to on Terran's part? What does Terran seem to care about from the beginning of the first book on? What's he want to be? A hero. A hero involves what? Sacrifice, heroic action, noble action. Rune is appealing to all of those ideas in Terran's mind. Terran has notions of what a prince ought to be like, right? He told Rune, I thought you took your title for granted. I was wrong. Rune is showing here, he knows how a prince should behave. He knows what noble behavior is, or noble worth is. I doubt I should ever really be able to measure up to being a true prince, except in this. Because he's saying, this is what a true prince should be willing to do. Okay? What have we seen on Terran's part? Going back to about the third chapter, maybe, of the first book, repeatedly, he puts himself in harm's way for whom? For other people. But he doesn't have the title Prince. Okay? Rune is essentially saying, Terran, you're pretty prince-like. Okay? Terran looks at him. And then he speaks. Notice, he looks at him for a long time. Why? I think it's because Terran is formulating the ideas he's going to say here. He's looking at Rune, and he's kind of like a little bit flabbergasted by him. He's a little bit surprised. I had measured you as no more than a feckless princeling. I was wrong. Notice the little confession here. You are a truer prince and better man than ever I believed. Truer prince. You're more prince-like than I ever thought possible. But this sacrifice is not yours to make. Why? I swore an oath to your father. I can't let you do this. Rune, well, okay. I lift it from you. No oath. He says, very well, I shall lift it from you. The oath was made in what? The oath was made in secrecy. Was Terran ever supposed to let Rune know about the oath? No, he wasn't. So now that Rune knows, he can say, no. I have choice. I have will. I get to decide. And then Rune notices the bats are all gone. Where'd the bats go? Okay? So there must be an opening. So, skip a bunch more. And Rune gets out. Chapter 14. Terran says, you saved our lives. Blah, 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 blah. Skip a bit. They talk about the book and such. The book was covered with all kinds of markings, and now the markings have disappeared. Fluter doesn't kind of believe. Rune says, I saw him myself, page 120. The bauble was shining straight on the pages, and the pages were full of writing. The pages that have been blank until this. Okay? So, 121, Terran says, the book must come from a place of enchantment. If Glue spoke the truth, it must come from a place of enchantment. But what it is, we can't know. Okay? Bottom of that page, 121. Terran says, you should be proud of yourself. Talking to Rune. Did you seek to prove yourself a true prince? You've done so. In other words, this is something others should know about. Okay? This is something to be praised. They keep talking, and Rune says, it doesn't make that much of a difference now. It's not that important. Bottom of 122. They're talking about the bauble, they're talking about the book again. And Fluter says, as a bard, I know a great deal about da-da-da-da-da. Harp string snaps. And then he says, top of 123. Eilonwy, of course, has the gift of making it light when she pleases. That is the bauble. She's half an enchantress, The bauble does belong to her. For someone else, I'm only guessing. I wonder if it might have to do with, how do I put this? Not even thinking about it or about yourself. That is, to make the bauble light up, you don't have to go, I really want you to light up. I really want you to light up. Possibly. Or you stop thinking about yourself. What I mean, he continues, in the cavern, when I tried to make it light, notice the agency. I was saying to myself, if I can do this, then I can find the way for us. He's putting all the importance on who does it. Okay? Taryn, I think you're right there, Fluter. At first I felt as you did. That is, I was thinking, if I could make it light, I could find a way out for us. And what would come as a result? A little pat on the back, kind of, is implied. But he says, then I remember thinking of Eilonwy, only of her, and the bauble showed its light. Prince Rune was ready to lay down his life. Notice the language Alexander uses there. By the way, Alexander says in some interviews somewhere, one of my colleagues and I were talking about it one time, he's not a Christian, but he uses a lot of Christian ideas and imagery, such as, no greater love hath man than to lay down his life for his friend. Notice the language he uses here. He was ready to lay down his life. Very biblical. His thoughts were for our safety, not at all for his own. And because he offered the greatest sacrifice, the bauble glowed brightest for him. Because he was willing to sacrifice himself, thinking not at all of himself, the thing, shone up like a searchlight. Can that be its secret? That is the secret of the bauble? To think more for others than ourselves? Well, Eilonwy makes it light up at times when she's kind of thinking about herself. It's pretty clear. Fluter. That would seem to be one of its secrets. That is, maybe that's one of the on-off switches, so to speak. Once you've discovered that, what? To think more for others than ourselves. You've discovered a great secret indeed. With or without the bauble. Now bear in mind, Fluter is how old compared to Taryn? I don't mean exact age. Much older. Fluter's had much greater experience of life. He's been around. Okay? What's he telling Taryn here? Once you've discovered that what? That secret, that point, that truth, which is to think more for others than yourself, then you've discovered a great secret indeed, a great truth indeed. Okay? What's Taryn been thinking about from the first book? Himself. I want to be a hero. I want to be praised. I want to have, blah, 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 blah. Okay? So, they go on, they meet up with Gwydion. Let's see here. Gwydion tells them 127 towards the bottom. The task that we're faced with now calls for a different kind of strength. That is, swords and physical strength aren't necessarily going to help us that much. He says there's an even greater danger to Eilonwy than I at first had thought. Okay. They talk to him about the book, about the bauble. Gwydion says 129. I don't know how to read this. It's beyond my power. But I do recognize it for what it is. It's the greatest treasure of the House of Llyr. Taryn, what is its nature? That is, kind of, what does it do? Gwydion, in response to, does it belong to Eilonwy? That is the book, not the bauble, the book. Gwydion nods. She's the last princess of Llyr. It's hers by blood right. But there is more you must understand. For generations, the daughters of the House of Llyr were among the most skillful enchantresses in Prydain, using their powers with wisdom and kindliness. In their fastness at Caer Colur were stored all their treasures, magical devices, blah, 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 blah. The lore tells of an enchantment known only as the Golden Peladrin, handed down from mother to daughter, and of a book holding all the secrets of those magical devices and many potent spells. The Book of Spells, who Angarad, daughter of Regat, carried away long ago, was believed lost. Of the Golden Peladrin, nothing was known. He looks down at the bauble and says, but it wasn't lost. What better way to hide it than put it in the hands of a child? In one of Poe's short stories, The Purloined Letter, if you've never read it before, it's about a stolen letter. And the detective has got to discover where the letter is. Well, the long and short of it is the letter was never actually hidden, taken, etc. It was sitting on a mantle the whole time of the story. Why? Because one of the ideas involved in there was the best way to hide something is put it in plain sight. Because people expect it's not going to be in plain sight. Nobody would put a letter that is supposed to be stolen out in the middle of plain sight. That must be a different letter. Okay? So, Gwydion says, Eilonwy believes she had been sent to live with Othran and studied being an enchantress. He says, not true. Othran kidnapped her. Okay? Taryn, but did Othran not realize what the bauble was? If she knew its nature, why did she leave it in Eilonwy's possession? Too smart to do otherwise. She recognized the paladin, but also knew it would lose its power if taken forcibly. Then too the book of spells had vanished. That is, the bauble on its own is pretty much worthless. Yeah, you can use it as a flashlight at times. Okay? But the bauble in the book, then you have sources of power. Okay? Gwydion goes on, says the spells are something that only a daughter of the house of Llyr can do. Eilonwy, not Othran. Okay? So, he kind of says, what do we now have? We have the bauble, and I think we have the book. And they've got them where? Within walking distance, so to speak, of where Othran is. You don't want to, mix these two too closely, okay? So, Taryn goes up to rescue Eilonwy to her room in the tower, and she doesn't recognize him. He tries to take her. Eilonwy talks about dreams, but they're fuzzy. And Taryn says 138. In response to her, could it have been an assistant pig keeper? I wonder what became of him. He's here now. Bottom of that page. He has long sought you, and in ways even he himself did not know. That is, and I sought you in other ways than merely, looking for you, probing deep within his heart. Now that he has found you, can you not find your path back to him? She tries to take him. She cries out for Othran. Taryn gets captured by Meg. Fluter says, let me at him. Chapter 17. Yeah, we'll probably finish this. Okay? So, we see Gwydion, Fluter, Taryn, Gurgi, Rune, and page 143, Othran tells them, put down your weapons. The girl's life is bound to mine. If you take my life, then she's going to die too. Okay? Gwydion says, obey her. Taryn does. Towards the bottom of 144, just about a little past half way down the page. Othran, when Gwydion says, why don't you let Eilonwy go, unloose the girl? No, Lord Gwydion. She will serve me as I planned. My spells are not the only ones to bind her. You know her ancestry, the blood of enchantresses that flows in her veins. Kirkalur itself is long awaited as princess. This is her birthright. I do no more than help her claim it. In other words, no, I'm not doing this to harm her. I'm just helping her what? Become what she really ought to be. I'm helping her, initiate her into her full powers. Taryn says no, you're forcing her, etc. Okay? Top of 145, Ocran says, I've shown her what this contains. All the implements of magic treasured up, etc., etc. And so you want her to give all that away? And we hear Eilonwy say essentially what Ocran wants her to say. And page 146, towards the bottom, Eilonwy, a distance away, starts to essentially torture Gurgi. Now, from what we know of Eilonwy, based on the first two books and part of this one, would she ever do that in her right state of... No, she wouldn't. The girl's fingers moved slightly. Gurgi's eyes opened wide in surprise, disbelief. For an instant, he stood unmoving, open mouth, staring at the princess. Her hand pointing straight at the baffled Gurgi, suddenly tensed. He stiffened, clutches his head. Okay. Fluter tells her to stop. 147, Eilonwy stops. And Gurgi, we're told, says, wise princess, it is no wish of hers to fill poor Tinderhead with harmful hurtings. Gurgi knows this. He forgives her. Now, remember, what were we told about Gurgi early on? What did Dalbin say about Gurgi? He's lost the natural wisdom of animals, or the animal kingdom, let's say, but he hasn't yet learned what? The knowledge of humanity. Okay? And yet Gurgi has just forgiven Eilonwy for torturing him. And why does he do it? Because he says, it wasn't you doing it. You didn't want to do that. Okay? Gurgi knows this. Who's doing it? From Gurgi's perspective, it's Ocran doing it. Okay? So, Mag says, he's going to be king, blah, 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 blah. Page 148. Terence tells Mag that Ocran's promises are false, and Ocran says, middle of the page, Aran of Anuvin shall cower and beg for mercy, but his throne shall be toppled. It was I, Ocran, who showed him the secret ways to power. He betrayed me, and now he shall suffer my vengeance. It was I who ruled Prydain before him. None dared question my dominion. Thus shall it be once more. Thus shall it be evermore. So how old's Ocran? She's pretty old. We're not told how much time has passed from when Aran became, the quote-unquote Dark Lord. But it was Aran's becoming Dark Lord that caused what to happen? The Sons of Dawn to come over from the Summer Country. They get inaugurated High Kings. They fight against Aran, blah, 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 blah. But notice she tells us here, before there was Aran, there was me. Gwydion, the Lord tells of your ancient rule, and how you sought to keep hearts and minds enthralled to you. You tormented those who would not worship you. For those who bowed to you, life was little better than a slow death. I know, too, the blood sacrifices you demanded, your joy at the cries of your victims. So she wasn't a benign, ruler, etc., etc. And he says, you think Eilonwy's going to help you to this? She will obey me, as surely as if I held her beating heart in my hand. Gwydion, no, she won't. Your words are vain. They cannot deceive me. Do you seek to rule through Eilonwy? The enchantments she commands still sleep. You don't have the means to waken them. She says, really? And Rune says, oh, yes, she does. The book, the golden light, we've got them. Proving how bumbling he is. All right? So, 151, Ocran says, I'm going to make him speak again. Tell me more about these. And Rune says, if you're thinking about torturing me, go ahead. It would be interesting to see how much you could find out, since I don't have the faintest idea where the Peladrin is. Okay? So Mag says, let me torture Fluter. Okay? Alonry says, if they've taken my bauble, they must return it. It is not fitting for it to remain in the hands of strangers. And then Ockran addresses Terran. You don't like this, do you? You don't like the fact that Alonry's behaving this way. It pains you to be called stranger. It cuts more cruelly than a knife, doesn't it? Well, she's going to stay this way. Or I could give back her memory of you. Is a golden trinket too high a price? After all, what did he do in the previous book? He gave away, essentially, a golden trinket. For what? For the Black Cauldron. But what would be the payment? What would he get in return for this golden trinket here? It'd be Alonry's memory of him, which in one sense is much, much more valuable than the Black Cauldron. What cares an assistant pig keeper whether I or another hold sway over Prydain? Lord Gwydion himself cannot gain for you what you hold dearest. What's she getting at? I know what you want. I can see inside you, Terran. I can give you her life, and much more. With me, the Princess Alonry shall be a queen, but who shall be her king? Would you have me set her free to wed a witless prince? You want Rune to be her husband? Yeah, Meg. So what will happen to you? To win a princess only to lose her to another? Are these not your thoughts, Terran of Caradalbin? Come on. Ockran gives favor for favor. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. Come on, tell me. Okay, you can have it. But not from Terran. Gwydion says those words. Why? The Prince of Dawn had stood with his wolf-gray head flung back, his eyes blazing, on his face a look of wrath. The warrior's voice rang harsh and cold. You shall have what you ask. The golden Peladrin book of spells are buried at the broken wall near the gate where I'm... And he just spills the beans. Why? To stop the torture, the mental, the emotional torture of Terran? Yeah, maybe up here on the surface level. Why else? Maybe Gwydion knows a little bit more about how these things work. Okay? So they're brought to her. Mag thinks he's finally won. She says, you're a groveling fool. And we see the spells put on Alonry's hand, 154. And we see the Peladrin in her other hand. And we're told, bottom of that page, she frowns. And a strange expression comes over her face. As Terran watched, horror-stricken, Alonry shuddered violently. She cries out. For an instant, her eyes opened wide. She appeared about to speak. Her voice was no more than a gasp. In that moment, it seemed to Terran, she regained some vague memory of herself. She sways. Ockran orders her to read out the spells. The light in the ball gets brighter. She says, quickly, quickly. And Alonry, Terran realized in a surge of hope, was struggling against all that held her. That is, she's got the book, she's got the Peladrin, and she's struggling against what is it that holds her. She's not bound, not physically. What holds her are Ockran spells. But what's happening with the ball and the book? She's quote-unquote coming to. She's seeing herself. That is, she's feeling herself in the sense of what it is she's supposed to be, an enchantress. Just any enchantress? You're You're grade B level 9 enchantress or grade A level 1. Taryn cried out in despair as Arlanwi raised her glowing sphere and in a quick motion brought it close to the empty pages. As she puts it there, the ball flares brighter, light flooded the hall. Gurgi throws himself to the back, the companions drew back, and Arlanwi throws the book to the ground. Red cloud comes up, the book is consumed. Akron is shrieking and still clutching the golden peladrin. Arlanwi crumples and falls. And Gwydion says, "Your power's over." He goes to overtake her, and Mag disappears. Gurgi and Rune run to Taryn. Fluter comes back, okay, because he's been after Mag. Gwydion tells them, "Save yourselves. The island is destroyed. Jump clear of the walls," etc., etc. So they jump. Page 159. Taryn wakes up. Whose face does he see over him? He feels a paw on his chest, and there's Rune. Beside him, Fluter. Okay. He says, "Just relax. Taryn, where are the others?" What others? He's seen Fluter. He's seen Llyr. He hasn't seen Gurgi. He hasn't seen Gwydion. He hasn't seen Arlanwi. Okay. Where's Arlanwi? Where's Gwydion? Bottom of 160. He sees Gwydion. He says, "She's alive. Arlanwi lives." Akron no longer holds her. Taryn, Akron's dead too then? Staring at a black shrouded figure. No, she's alive. Though long she hung, top of 161. Though long she hung between life and death. But her power is broken now. This is the answer to the riddle, yet I did not know it until I stood before her in the great hall. He says, "At first I wasn't certain. When I understood that she would truly let herself go down to death before giving up Arlanwi, I knew she had lost command of all but the least of her own enchantments. Her day had begun to wane from the moment she'd broken with the Lord of Inuven. Okay? The spells of the castle were her last hope. We need fear Akron no longer." Taryn, "I do." Akron spoke the truth to me. I had not the strength to listen to her any longer. I would have told her the hiding place. Hoped you would slay me before I did. Gwydion had to take the risk. Okay? So, they go to Arlanwi. Gwydion says, "Don't wake her up. She's got to wake up on her own." And Taryn says, "I would have given my life to keep her from harm, and I would give it now to spare her this." Akron asks, "What shall be the lot of an assistant pig keeper?" It is a question I've often asked myself. What does he mean? The lot. Like the phrase, "What is your lot in life?" Purpose. You've heard of the phrase, or maybe you haven't. Casting lots. It's quote unquote a means of what's called divination, trying to figure out what you're supposed to do in life. Taryn is asking or saying, Akron said, "What shall be your lot in life, Taryn?" He says, "I've asked that myself." Very beginning of the very first book. What does he want his lot in life to be? A hero. That's why he's trying to make a sword. I see now the life of an assistant pig keeper is of little use or import. There is no lot. He's saying, I'm what in the grand scheme of things? I'm nothing. I don't matter. I don't count. Even to offer it for someone else is of no avail. That is, I can't even do what Rune did back in the cavern, being willing to offer myself. Gwydion, Rune would gainsay you. That is, Rune would disagree. Without you, he would have wandered lost and in mortal danger. Yeah, well, I swore an oath to King Rudlam. I did not break it. Okay, so maybe your lot was to keep that oath. Gwydion, and had you not sworn an oath, would you not have done the same? Even if you hadn't sworn the oath, he says, are you honestly telling me when you realized Rune had ridden off away from the search party, you wouldn't have gone and tried to find him? Almost the exact same question is asked in the Harry Potter novels at the end of book 5. Harry's told by Albus Dumbledore, if you never knew anything, actually I think it's book 6, it is book 6, if you never knew anything about the quote-unquote prophecy about yourself and Voldemort, and that Voldemort was going to try to kill you, are you telling me you still wouldn't try to go out and try to stop him? Harry says, no, yeah, I probably would. Why? Because he's hurting people. Okay? Taryn, yes, 162 in the middle. I believe I would. It was more than my oath that bound me. He needed my help, as I needed his. I remember, too, when a Prince of Dawn aided a foolish assistant pig keeper. Is it not fitting now for the pig keeper to aid a prince? Well, go back to that first book and remember what Gwydion says fairly soon after he and Taryn meet. He says, it seems destiny has laid it in such a way that I shall be helped in my quest by an assistant pig keeper. And then he pauses and says, or maybe it's the other way around. Maybe it's destiny that a prince will help an assistant pig keeper on his quest. Gwydion, whether it be prince or pig keeper, such is the way of a man. What's the such stand for? Fitting to aid. Look at the question before. Is it not fitting now for the pig keeper to aid a prince? Gwydion, whether it be prince or pig keeper, that is, you can take those pig keeper prince and change them. He's saying it's the way of a, let's go broader, of a human to do what? To help others. The destinies of men are woven one with the other, and you can turn aside from them no more than you can turn aside from your own. Why? Because sometimes even trying to quote-unquote fulfill your own destiny, what are you therefore required to do? You are helping somebody else. And Ockran says, from off to the side, and you, Lord Gwydion, you have put a cruel destiny upon me. Death would have been a kindness. Why did you deny it to me? At the very end of The Lord of the Rings, Frodo stops Sam and a bunch of other hobbits from killing Saruman. After Saruman tries to kill Frodo, he says, no, don't. He didn't hurt me. He intended to, but he didn't hurt me. Okay? And he tells Saruman, I want you to leave, I want you to go off, and I want you to think about all the bad things you've done. He says, I'm making it much more trite than it is. Okay? And Saruman says, you have grown wise, halfling. Wise and merciless. Because for Saruman's thinking, from his point of view, what Frodo is doing is not merciful. From Frodo's way of thinking, it is merciful. Why? Because he says, I hope Saruman can find his cure. I hope he can get right. Okay? He can be healed. She says to Gwydion, you've destroyed me. Do you hope to see me grovel at your feet? Are my powers indeed stripped away? One last remains. Okay. And she tries to stab herself with a piece of driftwood, and Gwydion stops her. And he tells her, 163, your enchantments have ever been the enchantments of death. Your work, in other words, has ever been the work of death. Seek life. Awkward. What's he mean? Thank you for using that language, Bill. Turn it around. He's giving her the option to do what? Let's go all Southern Baptist-y. And I'm not a Southern Baptist. Turn or burn. This is your opportunity to do what? Repent. Because what does repent literally mean? Go the other direction. It doesn't mean if you're going this direction, go that direction. It means do a 180. She has ever been seeking death. Now he says, seek life. Add to life. Why death and life? Go back to Adion and Terran talking. And Terran talks about, battles and stuff, and he says, I've marched in a lot of battles. There is more honor to be found in a field well tilled than in a field steeped in blood. Gore and death, life and nurturing. She says, no life remains to me but that of an outcast. Leave me to myself. That is, let me do to myself what I want. Gwydion, find your own path, Akron. Should it lead you to Caer Dallben, know this. Dallben will not turn you away. Notice, he doesn't say, no, you're my prisoner. I'm going to make you turn. I'm going to make you be what I want you to. Nope. He leaves it to her and says, and if that path should show up at Dallben's door, Dallben will do what? He'll open that door. He'll let you in. Okay? So, Eilonwy still doesn't wake up, and finally she does. Terran asks, do you know us? She says, only Assistant Pigkeeper can ask a question like that. Of course I know you. What I don't know is why I'm soaking wet, covered with sand on this beach, etc., etc. Okay? Notice Gwydion. The Princess Eilonwy has come back to us. In other words, that's the girl we know. So, 166. Eilonwy says, I knew something was wrong with Mag from the moment I laid eyes on him. And yet you went with him? She says, of course. How else was I going to find out? In other words, of course I went with him. I wanted to investigate. Okay? I knew there was no use trying to get any sense out of you. Gwydion, you got to stop. Don't judge him too harshly. He thought only to protect you. He was under my orders. Blah, 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 blah. So we're going to skip a bit. Let's see here. 167. She says, until she held the bauble and the book, she couldn't see very well, but once she did, in the light of it, I could see all of you, not with my eyes, but in my heart. In other words, once I held the bauble, I saw a Gurgi. I saw Terran and Fluter, etc., etc. I felt a little the way you did long ago in the marshes of Morva, when you had to give up the brooch of Adion. Okay? I had to give up my powers in order to do what? To end what was happening. So, Gwydion, middle of that page. Eilonwy says, there's nothing left for me now except being a girl. Now, notice her language implies what? Except being a girl. That doesn't count as much. Gwydion, there is more than enough cause for pride. For all you chose to sacrifice, you have kept Akron from ruling Prydain. Okay? He goes, no. You can take an awful lot of pride in who you are, Eilonwy. Why? You stopped Akron from taking over. We owe more than our lives to you. Okay? Let's see here. Keep going on. They meet up with Glue as they go back. Taryn, page 169. He's talking to Taryn says, once you are safe at Dennis Ridnant, I shall stay no longer on Mona. I had hoped after all you'd been through, you'd want to come back with us, but Gwynne's sure Dalbin meant for you to stay here. Suppose he's right, etc., etc. And Eilonwy says, one thing more I remembered at Caer Callur. Dalbin saying that there was a time when we must be more than what we are. Can it be true that being a young lady is more important than being an enchantress? Perhaps that's what he meant. I shall have to find out. So if I must learn to be a young lady, whatever that may be, that's any different from what I am, then I shall try to learn twice as fast as those silly geese. Why? Caer Dalbin is my only real home now. Now, what is she really saying? And Taryn's too dense to understand. I want to get back to you in Caer Dalbin as quickly as possible. So she's going to study really hard. And they see the battle horn. Eilonwy tells Taryn, bottom 169, this is going to be important later. It's all that's left of Caer Callur. What use it might be, I don't know, never shall. But if you promise not to forget me until we meet again, I promise not to forget you. And this is my pledge. So, I won't forget you. Here's what I promise on. Taryn, no problem there. But what have I to give you? That is, what can I give you in return? I don't have anything other than my word. Well, what is a person's word supposed to be? You know, we have a phrase. My word is my bond. It's the thing that ties. Okay? The notion of integrity. Eilonwy. The word of an assistant pig keeper. That's good enough. Giving gifts is much nicer than saying farewell. And Taryn says, and yet we must say farewell. Why? Because you're going to get married to Rune, you know. She goes, yeah, right. I assure you they shall do no such thing. There's limits to having people make up your mind for you. Rune has certainly improved. I think this journey was the best thing ever happened to him. Blah, blah, blah. Did you seriously think for a moment that I would ever? Taryn of Caer Dalbin. And then she says, I'm not speaking to you. Okay? What does she mean? Did you seriously think for a moment I would ever? Question mark. It's in relation to Taryn saying you're supposed to get married to Rune at the appropriate time. Isn't she saying, did you seriously think for a moment I would ever marry anybody else? Not anybody else but Rune, but I think it's there. Okay, we'll have a quiz over this on Friday. We start Taryn Wanderer. We've got 3 days assigned for that. It's probably going to take us 4. You might want to start the next book after this, which I think is Garth Nix's, the first one in the Nix, because it's a lot longer. And if you're having any difficulty at all with these, you're going to get lost in the next ones.